One of the most controversial UK emergency coronavirus laws passed on the 26th of March 2020 was to close cemeteries for family and friends to visit their loved one's grave except for attendance at the actual funeral. This legal position has now changed. Here's 2 points summarising what the current law says as of the 22nd of April 2020. 1. Cemeteries should now remain open for visits. 2. Family and friends, and in particular close family and friends who were sadly unable to attend the funeral of their loved one due to their own hospital admission or who were self-isolating, can now travel to the cemetery and visit their loved one's grave after recovery or the period of self-isolation has ended, this being their right to pay respects to their loved ones. Remember to click the subscribe button to be the first to watch our groundbreaking series on emergency coronavirus laws. Previously, Regulation 5.8 of the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions England Regulation 2020 closed burial grounds, save for funerals. Regulation 5.8, person who is responsible for a crematorium or burial ground must ensure that during the emergency period the crematorium is closed to members of the public except for funerals or burials. This was particularly painful and harsh on those family members who were unable to attend the funeral of their loved one due to their own hospital admission or the fact that they were self-isolating and then prevented from visiting the cemetery later because the cemetery was closed for public access save for funerals. However, during the Downing Street Daily Coronavirus briefing on the 18th of April 2020, the local community secretary said, "I'm also asking councils to keep open or indeed to reopen cemeteries and graveyards for people to make that private visit and seek solace at the grave of someone you've loved or to privately lay flowers. There have been times in my life when I have needed to do that. These are small steps, but small mercies can make a difference." This request of councils has now been put into law by the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions England Amendment Regulation 2020, which came into force on the 22nd of April 2020, to allow councils and privately owned burial sites to open and not just for funerals. Regulation 5.8 as amended and the newly inserted 5.8a reads as follows. Regulation 5.8, a person who is responsible for a crematorium must ensure that during the emergency period the crematorium is closed to members of the public except for funerals or burials. Note the words or burial grounds was removed. And significantly, Regulation 5.8a reads, Paragraph 8 does not apply to grounds surrounding a crematorium, including any burial ground or garden of remembrance. In short, these amendments allow cemeteries and burial grounds to reopen. In addition, originally Regulation 6 did not specify that it was a reasonable excuse for a person to leave their home to visit the cemetery, apart from attending the actual funeral of a close loved one. This previously meant that travelling to visit the cemetery would be considered a non-reasonable excuse and thus prohibited by lockdown regulations in force. This again has been reversed on the 22nd of April 2020. The amended Regulation 6.1.2g and GA now reads in full, Regulation 6.1, during the emergency period no person may leave or be outside of the place where they are living without reasonable excuse. For the purposes of paragraph 1, a reasonable excuse includes the need G. to attend a funeral of a member of the person's household, a close family member, or if no one within subparagraphs Roman numerals 1 or Roman numerals 2 are attending, a friend. And GA. to visit a burial ground or garden of remembrance to pay respects to a member of the person's household, a family member or friend. In short, you can travel to the cemetery whether a funeral took place recently or several years ago. It is important to note that restrictions on gatherings still remains in place and includes visiting the cemetery apart from a funeral where such gatherings are permitted. Regulation 7c states, during the emergency period no person may participate in a gathering in a public place of more than 2 people except to attend a funeral. Remember, social distancing advice also remains in place if you're visiting the cemetery. Here's 8 concluding points. 1. Those responsible for cemeteries should keep them open as per government advice and as permitted through regulation, although it seems currently there is no legal duty to do so. 2. Limits can be placed by local rules on the numbers attending the cemetery, by the owners of the private burial ground or by the local council. 3. Anyone who finds a cemetery closed should raise concerns, if necessary, in writing with the local council. 4. If you are travelling to the cemetery, it is also advised to travel in separate cars if you are not part of the same household. 5. Whether to keep cemeteries open or closed still divides opinion in some quarters. 6. Particular categories of mourners should not attend the cemetery or a funeral, for example those who have tested positive for COVID-19. Please see the government's updated guidance. 7. Allowing cemeteries open will provide some comfort for those bereaved and help in the grieving process. Anyone who finds it difficult to come to terms with the passing of a loved one should seek support and advice from a doctor, counsellor or chaplain. 8. And remember, the restrictions placed by these stay-at-home regulations are reviewed every 21 days. They may be relaxed or kept in place, so please keep updated with the latest government announcements. Thank you for watching, and please support community legal education by subscribing to the channel.